In this next skill, we will be learning the basic properties of polynomial functions. Now, you've been learning about polynomial functions for a long time, you just didn't know it. So we're going to start off in level 1 by defining polynomial functions. Here is the official mathematical definition of a polynomial function. So it's a polynomial function in this form, and you don't need to write this down, you can pause it and write it down if you want, but basically a polynomial is a function that has constants, variables, and exponents, but it does not have division by a variable, and the exponents have to be whole numbers. And remember, whole numbers are always positive or 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So no negative exponents and no fraction exponents. So some examples of polynomials. Something like f of x equals 3x to the 5th power minus 2x to the 4th plus 6x squared minus 1. It has a bunch of terms with various exponents, and something as simple as f of x equals 3x squared plus 2x minus 1. That's a polynomial. So it just has constants, variables, and exponents, no fraction exponents, and they can also be in factored form. So something like f of x equals x minus 2 times x plus 5 would also be a polynomial. So these are some examples of things that are polynomials. Things that are not polynomials would be division by a variable. So something like f of x equals 1 over x plus 2. We're dividing by a variable. That's not a polynomial. Or f of x equals 2x to the negative 1. That's not a polynomial because when you have a negative exponent, that's division by a variable. This is 2 over x to the 1st power. So not a polynomial, and you can't have like a radical on your variable, so something like f of x equals the square root of x plus 5. Remember that a radical is a fraction exponent, so those would all not be polynomials. Next, we're going to talk about degree of a polynomial. The degree of a polynomial is the largest power of x that occurs. If we look at this first part, we've got a couple examples of polynomials here. This polynomial 4 has no variable, so this is like 4 times x to the 0 power. So the largest exponent that occurs in this case would be 0. This is a degree 0, and we call this a constant function, which we've seen before, and the graph of a constant function is a horizontal line. So I would go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be the function f of x equals 4. Okay, the next one, the largest exponent that occurs is a 1. This is a degree 1, which we call a linear function. So like I said before, we've seen these before, we just didn't know that they were polynomials. So a linear polynomial makes a straight line. 4x would be pretty steep, something like that. So that would be f of x equals 4x. Okay, the next one, the largest exponent, is a 2, and that's a quadratic polynomial. And it makes a parabola, something like this. Okay, The next one, the largest exponent, is a 3. That's its degree, and we call this a cubic function. And again, these words are not new. You've heard this before. And it looks something like this. And our next one is a 4th degree, and we call that quartic. And it kind of makes a parabola too. Okay, so it goes on from there. Whatever the biggest exponent you have in your polynomial gives you its degree. Now for a few examples, we have to state whether or not these are polynomials, and if they are, give the degree. So looking at this first one, I have constants, variables, and exponents. My exponents are all whole numbers, so they're positive exponents. They're not fractions, they're not negative. We have no division by a variable, so yes, this is a polynomial. And the degree is the largest exponent on the variable, so that would be 3. The next one is not a polynomial because we have a fraction exponent. This is like x to the 1/2. And the exponents have to be whole numbers. They have to be positive whole numbers. So that's not a polynomial. And the next one has division by a variable, so it's not a polynomial. It's the quotient of two polynomials. But no, so no division by a variable makes it not a polynomial. And here, no fraction exponents. Okay, and the next one doesn't have any negative exponents, and it doesn't have any fraction exponents. It doesn't have division by a variable, so this one's yes. Now as for the degree, since it's in factored form, the highest exponent after it's multiplied out is not going to be a 3 because this part right here is going to have an x squared term, and when that x squared gets multiplied by x to the 3rd, we're going to end up with an x to the 5th term. So the degree for this is going to be 5.